Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 88 based on novel. So let's start. Wild gales blew across the large desert while yellow sand permeated the place. Meanwhile, countless powerful experts from the Alliance army had pale expressions on their faces as they stared at the huge ice mirror in the sky. As of now, although the seal between the planes was still reflected in the ice mirror, as the ancient glowing figure slowly disappeared, it was clear that the main backbone of the formation would gradually weaken. After its backbone was broken, was the seal between the planes still able to block the Yimo Emperor, who had already escaped from his own seal? In fact, once the seal between the planes breaks, and the Yimo Emperor descends into this world once again, was there anyone in this world who could stop him? Countless individuals had pale expressions on their faces, while their eyes were all filled with despair. Was this the end result of all their hard work? Standing in the sky, when the Life-Death Masters group saw this scene, all of them sighed quietly. After which, they lifted their heads, before they looked at the delicate and alluring figure in the sky. Currently, she was standing in the sky, while her crystal long hair was dancing with the wind. At this juncture, she was most likely the only one who could possibly reverse the situation. Perhaps it was because they had detected where the Life-Death Masters group had directed their attention. Countless experts from the Alliance army also began to turn their heads, before they focused their attention on Ying Huan. After all, based on the words left behind by the symbol ancestor before he vanished, it was clear that the key to turning things around lied with the legendary Ice Master. Perhaps she was the only one who had the ability to turn the situation around, and save every living being in this world from the miserable fate of being enslaved by the Yimo. Lin Dong looked at the countless pairs of eyes that had turned towards Ying Huan, before he realized that their eyes were all filled with anticipation and hope. It was the only glimmer of hope that they could see amidst the despair. However, the weight of everyone's expectations and hope had seemingly created an invisible and massive pressure. This pressure was as heavy as a mountain, and it was pressing heavily on her tender shoulders. Lin Dong stared at the lovely figure standing in the sky, before his heart began to ache. Promptly, he clenched his teeth gently before he turned his head. Standing in the sky, while she was being stared at by countless individuals with hope in their eyes, Ying Huan slowly lowered her head. However, she did not look at these people, who were now regarding her as the savior of the world. Instead, all she did was to look at Lin Dong. Lin Dong was looking into the horizon, and it seemed as though he had not detected her actions. However, she showed no signs of turning away. Meanwhile, countless individuals in this place were shocked as they turned to look at Lin Dong in bewilderment. Clearly, they could not fathom the relationship between the two of them. The stalemate between the two of them continued for a long time. Finally, Lin Dong curled his lips before he turned around and looked directly at Ying Huan. Meanwhile, the latter's crystal-clear eyes were quietly staring at his. In fact, it seemed as though there was an extremely complicated emotion flowing within them. However, when Lin Dong saw her eyes, he felt a flash of uncertainty within his heart. Currently, the Yimo Emperor has broke free of his seal, and he is eyeing this world from outside the crack between the planes. However, if the Yimo Emperor wants to destroy the seal left behind by Teacher, he would need at least a year to do so. Ying Huan's voice reverberated through the sky, causing everyone to rejoice while fretting at the same time. They were rejoicing because they still had 1 year left. However, they were fretting over what would happen after 1 year. As of now, the Alliance army is of little use. If we want to stop Doomsday from arriving in 1 year's time, there is only one solution. Ying Huan lowered her pretty eyes before she softly said, "That's to create another symbol ancestor." Countless experts were speechless when they heard this. After all, everyone knew that the calamity could be avoided if there was another symbol ancestor. However, how could it be so easy to reach the symbol ancestor's cultivation level? Lin Dong stared intently at Ying Huan, while the uneasy sensation in his heart slowly intensified. Next, I will activate all the energy in this world, join forces with the ancient masters, the 8 great ancestral symbols, 9 ancient divine objects. Ying Huan suddenly clenched her hands and shouted. Meanwhile, her icy cold voice sounded sterner than before. "Assist me in becoming an ancestor." Uproar. An earth-shaking commotion promptly erupted within the Alliance army. In fact, rich and dense shock promptly surged out from within their eyes. However, soon after, wild and unrestrained joy began to climb onto their faces. If Ying Huan was truly able to advance to the legendary ancestor stage, wouldn't that mean that there would be a second symbol ancestor in this world? The Life-Death Masters group was in shock as they stared at Ying Huan. Was she finally going to mobilize that power in an attempt to break into the ancestor stage? Attempting to break into the ancestor stage. When Lin Dong heard Ying Huan's words, waves were also stirred within his heart. In fact, it was a long while later before he finally calmed down. After which, he clenched his teeth and said, "What are the odds that you will successfully break into the ancestor stage? Moreover, what will happen to you if you fail?" Ying Huan used her crystal-like pretty eyes to look at Lin Dong before she replied, 30%. If I fail, my reincarnation will shatter and I will perish. Immediately, the joyous atmosphere in the desert froze. 30%? Why was it so low? Countless experts looked at each other, before they promptly gave a bitter laugh. It seems like they were overly optimistic. After all, how could it be so easy to advance to the ancestor stage? In fact, even a legendary figure like the Ice Master only had such a low chance of success. Moreover, the consequences should one fail were far too horrifying. Lin Dong stared intently at Ying Huan. This was something that he had anticipated. However, he still felt that something was amiss. Hence, he hesitated for a moment before asking, "What happens if you succeed?" Ying Huan's crystal-like eyes seemingly shrunk at this moment, before she said, "If I succeed, it means that I have succeeded. What more do you want to know?" "Life-Death Master, may I ask if she is telling the truth?" Lin Dong looked at the Life-Death Masters group and asked. The latter hesitated for a moment, before she sighed quietly and said, "Little junior sister, at this juncture, there is no longer a need to hide it from him. If you fail in your attempt to break into the ancestor stage, your reincarnation will be shattered. However, if you succeed, it is likely that all your emotions will be frozen as well. In fact, teacher mentioned this before, that you are different from the rest of us." Indeed. Lin Dong involuntarily clenched his fists while a trace of fury flashed across his eyes. Following which, he stared intently at Ying Huan before he chuckled, "How noble of you. Putting it in this way, regardless of the outcome, there would be no happy ending. Why was this woman always behaving like this?" When Ying Huan saw the fury burning within Lin Dong's eyes, she did not back away as she continued to stare back at him. Meanwhile, there was unquestioning determination within her eyes. This stare down lasted for a moment, before Lin Dong's expression suddenly lightened up. This was because he could see the helplessness and hesitation hidden beneath her determined exterior. Therefore, he softened his voice and asked, "Can it be someone else? Is there anyone else that is a better candidate than me?" Ying Huan's crescent-like eyebrow lifted haughtily before she asked. "Currently, I am a pretty decent candidate, right?" Lin Dong clenched his teeth and said. Indeed, as of now, he had advanced to the Divine Palace Master level. Perhaps, he was a little weaker than Ying Huan. However, as of now, there was no way he would lose out to any of the other ancient masters. No way. Ying Huan straightened her crescent-shaped eyebrows, before she rejected him without hesitation. "You?" Lin Dong became outraged as he cried out, "Are you really itching to become the savior of the world?" "This is my destiny," Ying Huan softly replied. Lin Dong clenched his hands tightly. Meanwhile, his body was trembling as he stared at Ying Huan. A long while later, he suddenly inhaled a deep breath of air, before the expression on his face became a lonely and downtrodden one. His voice was a little hoarse as he said, "Is this your final decision? It is obvious that I currently possess the qualifications. Why must you insist on acting this way?" When Ying Huan saw Lin Dong's downtrodden expression, she involuntarily clenched her jade-like hands, before she gritted her teeth and slowly nodded her head. Lin Dong gave a faint smile. Meanwhile, there was lethargy in his smile, which could not be concealed. Promptly, an indifferent expression appeared on his face as he said, "In that case, good luck." After he spoke, he turned around and prepared to leave. Wait. During the final stage, I will require the strength of the Ancestor Stone and the ancestral symbols. I hope that you can control them and assist me. When Ying Huan saw Lin Dong turning around to leave, a bitter sensation gushed into her icy cold heart. However, she forcefully suppressed her emotions before she promptly spoke up. Lin Dong's body trembled gently. He turned around before he stared at Ying Huan lethargically. Right now, up against his gaze, even Ying Huan did not dare to meet his eyes head-on. Instead, she gently averted her eyes. Can I ask you one final question? Go ahead. Lin Dong slowly clenched his fist. Then, he stared at Ying Huan before he articulated every word clearly. Right now, you the Ice Master or Ying Huan? Ying Huan descended into silence. Countless experts within the Alliance army looked at the both of them. Clearly, they realized that there was a complicated relationship between the two of them. They turned to look at each other though they did not dare to speak up. Lin Dong looked at Ying Huan, who had descended into silence. As if he came to a sudden comprehension, he gave a faint smile before he said, "It's just as well. Allow her to remain in my heart then." "Thank you." After he spoke, Lin Dong flicked his arm. Immediately, 3 ancient symbols shot out from within his body and flew towards Ying Huan. Finally, a trace of blood flashed across Lin Dong's finger, before he gently drew a line in midair. As that blood line was drawn, the 3 ancestral symbols suddenly shook violently. Faintly, buzzing noises erupted while an unwilling emotion spread. Lin Dong covered his mouth and coughed. A trace of blood had actually appeared on the corner of his lips, while his face had also become much paler. It turns out he was actually unilaterally severing his connection with the 3 ancestral symbols. Lin Dong. Brother Lin Dong. Big brother. Ling Qingshu, Qingtan, Little Flame and the rest had a drastic change in their expressions when they saw this. Lin Dong waved his hand, before he once again jerked his arm. Following which, the Ancestor Stone, Great Desolate Tablet and Mysterious Divine Palace shot out. Finally, he spoke in a faint voice, "Go and help her." Lin Dong, Yang appeared in a flash. He looked at Lin Dong before he said anxiously. Lin Dong smiled and said, "There is something that I must do as well and I'm afraid that I cannot be in 2 places at once. Hence, this is the only way." "What are you going to do?" Yang quickly asked. "Pass the reincarnation tribulations," Lin Dong softly said. Yang was stunned. He looked at Lin Dong's expression before an uneasy sensation suddenly surged. "Pass the first reincarnation tribulation." Lin Dong smiled and shook his head, before he replied, "All 3 of them." Yang was stunned. Meanwhile, standing in the sky, Ying Huan, who was staring in shock at the 3 ancestral symbols in front of her, suddenly trembled. "Lord Ice Master, I hope that you will succeed. Since there is nothing left for me to do, I will be making a move first." Lin Dong cupped his hands towards Ying Huan. After which, he did not linger on. His body moved before he transformed into a ray of light and flew swiftly out of the western Xian region. Qingtan, Ling Qingshu, Little Flame and Little Martin quickly followed behind upon seeing this. Countless individuals were speechless when they saw this development. Clearly, they did not understand why things had developed until this stage. Ying Huan extended her icy cool long hand, before she grabbed the 3 ancestral symbols, Ancestor Stone, and the other divine objects. Her crystal-like pretty eyes were a little absent-minded as she looked at the man, who was disappearing into the horizon. Suddenly, a terrible sensation rose within her heart, and it caused her to bite her red lips. In fact, traces of crimson-red blood began to seep forth. While she was being stared at by countless onlookers, she gently lifted her pretty face before she used a voice that was only audible to her, and muttered to herself. "I have always been lying to you, sorry, truly, I deserve to be hated." The decisive fight with the Devil Prison came to an end because of the Heaven Seat King and his men's maniacal move. However, the threat to the world did not vanish after the Heaven Seat King and his men disappeared. Instead, everyone sunk into greater despair. This was because the seal between the planes had already lost its equilibrium. Moreover, the most frightening aspect was that the Yimo Emperor, who was once completely sealed after the symbol ancestor ignited his reincarnation, had actually broke free of his seal. Furthermore, the latter was currently waiting with ill intent outside the seal between the planes, preparing to once again descend into this world. At that time, a true calamity would unfold. The three Great Alliance army withdrew from the Western Xian region. Other than the top experts, the remaining members of the Alliance army went back to where they came from. This was because the Alliance army had already lost its purpose at this moment. After all, if the Yimo Emperor once again descended into this world, and they failed to produce a second symbol ancestor, regardless of how large the Alliance army was, they could not salvage the situation. After all, up against a creature like the Yimo Emperor, the difference between them could never be breached with numbers. As the three Great Alliance army withdrew, the events that unfurled within the Western Xian region quickly spread across the entire world. Immediately, countless individuals were bewildered. They lifted their heads and stared at the universe. Faintly, they were able to detect that a destroyer was slowly approaching them from the distant void. A stifling pressure which could not be described with words enveloped the entire world. Countless individuals lived in fear because of this. However, they were not in complete despair. This was because they knew that the legendary Ice Master was doing her best to break into the Ancestor stage. If she was able to do so, this world would be saved once again. Amidst the despair, this was the final glimmer of hope that every living being in this world depended upon. After Lin Dong left the Western Xian region, he headed back to the Great Yang Empire. After so many years, this was the first time he felt so lethargic. In fact, he felt so lethargic that he neither returned to the Lin clan nor Dao sect. Standing in the sky above the Great Yang Empire, Lin Dong pondered for a moment before he headed towards the western part of the Great Yang Empire. Soon after, many mountains flashed past beneath him, before a bustling small town finally appeared in his sight. This was not a huge town. However, it vaguely gave off a familiar sensation. This sensation caused a special emotion to rise within Lin Dong's lethargic heart. This was Qingyang Town, the place where he was born and brought up in. A thought passed through Lin Dong's mind before he appeared within the town immediately. A bustling crowd was accompanied by rowdy noises as it spread. Meanwhile, Lin Dong slowly walked amongst them. However, this seemingly bustling crowd posed no obstacle to him. After so many years, this town had changed tremendously. However, relying on his memories, Lin Dong was still able to locate some familiar places. He was in a trance-like state as he walked along the street. After which, he suddenly realized that a fragrant smell had appeared beside him. He turned his head and saw a white-dressed, gorgeous fairy-like beauty, Ling Qingzhu, walking quietly beside him. Meanwhile, when she saw him turning his head, a faint smile appeared on her stunning face. "Are you all right?" Ling Qingzhu spoke softly. Meanwhile, this was the first time she ever spoke in such a soft and gentle tone. After all, after so many years, this was the first time she ever saw Lin Dong in such a lethargic state. This fellow had always maintained a sharp and formidable demeanor. Regardless of the dangers that he faced, he would charge forward fearlessly. In fact, even if he was beaten by others until he fell to his knees, he would still wipe off the blood and stand up once again with a vicious expression in his eyes. Moreover, though everyone witnessed his outstanding accomplishments, they forgot about the effort that he had put in to accomplish them. He had encountered one powerful foe after another. However, he was always the last man standing. Lin Dong nodded gently. However, he was still feeling upset. Ling Qingzhu gently bit her lips when she saw this. Subsequently, she extended her long delicate hand before she grabbed Lin Dong's hand. After which, she locked her fingers with his, before she held tightly onto his hand. Lin Dong was slightly startled. In fact, he realized that Ling Qingzhu's delicate body had stiffened momentarily. After all, the latter had a cold and prideful demeanor. Moreover, she typically preferred to hide her emotions within her heart, and quietly endure the bitterness and sweetness without mentioning it to others. Therefore, it was a rarely seen sight for her to voluntarily take the initiative. Lin Dong sighed. When he saw that Ling Qingzhu was willing to set aside her pride in order to comfort him, he felt warmth in his heart. Promptly, he stared at her before he softly said, "I'm sorry." He had received a rejection from someone else, yet she had to be the one to set aside her ego and take care of him. This was clearly unfair towards her. However, she had always been this way. Willing to quietly endure and accept everything, she was so heartachingly tough. "There is no need to apologize." Ling Qingzhu shook her head and said, "Let's go. I will show you my Lin family manner." Lin Dong grinned. He held Ling Qingzhu's hand before he relied on his memories and walked towards his Lin family manor. It was not the Lin clan. Instead, it was the Lin family. A small branch family. Yet, this was the place which he treasured the most. Ling Qingzhu nodded gently, before she gave a sweet and gentle smile, which made hundreds of blooming flowers pale in comparison. The both of them walked across the street. After which, Lin Dong stopped. With shock in his eyes, he stared at the sight in front of him. This was the intersection between a couple of streets. However, this place was currently a little chaotic. From the looks of it, it seems like two factions were fighting. The sound of fist meeting flesh was accompanied by sharp miserable screeches. Lin Dong looked at the group in front of him. There was a fearsome-looking young man holding onto a wooden rod, before he swung it towards the group standing opposite him. His ferocity intimidated the others and no one dared to stop him. Lin Dong looked at this somewhat familiar-looking young man, before he became a little absent-minded. Eventually, he managed to dig him out from his memories. Raging Blade Dojo, Wu Yun. This young man seemed to be quite powerful as he managed to deal with most of the opponents on his own. After which, he patted his hands in a pleased fashion before he tossed away the wooden rod in his hand. Then, he smilingly said, "How dare you offend my Raging Blade Dojo in Qingyang Town? You must have a death wish. Please, do you really think that your Raging Blade Dojo is the strongest faction in Qingyang Town? Do you have any objections?" Wu Yun widened his eyes as he cried out. "Have you forgotten about the Lin family in Qingyang Town?" That man coldly snorted. Wu Yun's expression stiffened. He cried out angrily in embarrassment, "What do you know? I wonder which corner you were hiding at when I joined forces with Lin Dong to deal with the minions from the Xie family and the Lei family." Right after his voice sounded, a soft laughter sounded from a short distance away. Wu Yun immediately turned his head angrily as he prepared to mess with the guy who actually dared to mock him. However, when he turned around, he immediately saw a black-clothed young man as well as a stunning beauty, who was so beautiful that it caused everyone around her to lose their breath, standing at the front of the street. Wu Yun became a little absent-minded due to Ling Qingzhu's stunning looks. However, he quickly recovered his senses. Immediately, his eyes widened as he stared at the black-clothed young man. His finger was trembling in shock as he pointed at the latter and said, Lin Dong?" Instantly, the originally noisy street became completely silent. Many disbelieving pairs of eyes turned to look at that black-clothed young man. Was he the legendary Lin Dong from the Lin family? The crowd slowly focused their attention on him. Finally, the disbelief in their eyes gradually disappeared before wild heat surged. After all, was there anyone in the Great Yang Empire who did not know who Lin Dong was? Moreover, this legendary man had actually came from their Qingyang town. When he saw their fervent expressions, Lin Dong cupped his hands together and smiled towards Wu Yun. After which, he grabbed Ling Qingzhu's hand and walked towards the other side of the street. The crowd was staring at his back and no one dared to walk up to him. In fact, even Wu Yun was scratching his head, before he punched the chest of the person standing beside him with excitement and said, "Did you see that? Lin Dong actually greeted me. God damn it. How many times have I told you guys before? He has actually returned to Qingyang town. I must go and pay him a visit later on. Ouch, boss. Please be gentler." Compared to most other places, the area outside the Lin family manor was much more peaceful. After all, most Lin family members had moved to the Lin clan. In fact, hardly anyone remained behind in this old manor in Qingyang town. Nonetheless, the moment Lin Dong showed up at the front door, a servant cleaning the courtyard immediately realized his presence. The latter was promptly stunned for a moment, before he quickly took off. Immediately, his loud cries echoed across the entire Lin family. Young Master Lin Dong has returned. The originally quiet and peaceful Lin family immediately erupted into an uproar before many individuals came flooding forth. Meanwhile, their eyes were all filled with excitement and joy as they looked at the tall young man walking in from the front door. Donga! Suddenly, the large group split apart, before a middle-aged man with some white hair ran forward with an excited expression on his face. First uncle. Lin Dong looked at this middle-aged man, before he quickly walked forward and supported him. This person was his first uncle, Lin Ken. Over all these years, he had stayed behind in Qingyang town to guard their old manor. Little fellow, you have finally returned. I thought that you have forgotten about this place. Lin Ken looked much older than before. However, when he looked at Lin Dong, his eyes were filled with joy. Although he had stayed behind in Qingyang town, he had still heard about the numerous deeds accomplished by Lin Dong after he left. After all, he was the pride of their entire Lin family. Lin Dong felt a little emotional in his heart. Then, he looked at Ling Qingshu, before he scratched his head and said, "This is my first uncle. You can also address him in this way." A flush swiftly appeared on Ling Qingshu's stunning face. After which, she bowed towards Lin Ken and said, "Greetings, first uncle." "Ha, you must be Qingshu, am I right?" "Not bad. Lin Xiao has already told me about you." Ha, it seems like Lin Dong has really good taste." Lin Ken smilingly nodded. He observed Ling Qingshu for a moment, before his eyes were filled with satisfaction. After all, even across the entire Eastern Xian region, there were hardly any ladies that could match up to Ling Qingshu in terms of looks and demeanor. In fact, no one in Qingyang town had ever saw such a stunning beauty before. This was evident from the fact that there were numerous young men secretly peeping at her with heated eyes. "It's good now that you are back. Your room has always been kept clean. Do you want me to ask someone to take you over?" Lin Dong shook his head. He chatted with Lin Ken for a while before he led Ling Qingshu and walked towards the back mountain. After they left, no one cared about this back mountain and it was now overrun with wild weeds. When a gentle breeze swept past, the wild grass and flowers scattered across the mountain would dance gently with the wind. Meanwhile, there were numerous houses located in this back mountain. Although they were simple-looking houses, they were kept clean and tidy. Lin Dong walked to the front of a house. After which, he stared at the wooden pillars that were stuck deep in the ground. In fact, he could vaguely see various palm imprints on these wooden pillars. When Lin Dong stood in front of these wooden pillars, he became a little absent-minded. He recalled that many years ago, regardless of rain or shine, a skinny tender young man would bitterly practice a simple martial arts over and over again in this place. At that time, all he wanted to do was to become stronger and seek justice for his father. Perhaps that naive young man from before would have never imagined that one day, he would become one of the top experts in this world. However, so what if this was the case? Lin Dong slowly shut his eyes. Meanwhile, his face was plastered with fatigue. For the next few days, Lin Dong stayed in Qingyang town and showed no signs of leaving. Moreover, each day was spent in an exceptionally peaceful manner. He would merely take a leisurely stroll in the peaceful back mountain, while Ling Qingshu quietly tagged along. Lin Ken seemed to have detected Lin Dong's emotional state of mind as well. Therefore, he rejected everyone who had showed up to visit him, and did not allow anyone to disturb him. On the third day, Little Martin and Qingtan had also rushed over to Qingyang town. Moreover, they even went to the capital and brought Lin Xiao and Liu Yang back. The instant Liu Yang saw Lin Dong, she immediately ran over and hugged him. Meanwhile, her eyes reddened. This was because along the way, Little Martin had already told her about everything that took place. Moreover, this was the first time she ever saw her son, who was always brimming with energy and vigor and would never admit defeat regardless of how bleak the situation was, with such a lethargic expression on his face. Therefore, his expression nearly caused her heart to break. "Donga, there are some problems in this world that can never be resolved perfectly. Your hard work did not go to waste. We'll always be proud of you." Liu Yang hugged Lin Dong while tears rolled down her face. Then, she said, if you grow tired, your parents are always here for you. Don't weigh yourself down with the burden of saving the world. It doesn't matter how terrifying the Yimo Emperor is. As long as Mother is by your side, I will never allow you to die before I do. At this moment, even though Lin Dong's heart had been toughened up after experiencing numerous struggles over the years, he involuntarily hugged Liu Yang tightly. Meanwhile, tears began to roll down his face. After all these years, this was his most vulnerable moment. Standing beside them, Lin Xiao's eyes also turned red. Then, he patted Lin Dong's shoulder before he said, "Well done, son. Father is proud of you. In the future, let's stay in Qingyang town. I have asked Lin Xia, Lin Hong, and the rest to come back and we will stay by your side." Lin Dong rubbed off his tears and smilingly nodded. Lin Xiao eventually pulled away Liu Yang, whose eyes were completely red. Standing beside them, little Martin looked at Lin Dong. After which, he looked at the deepest part of the back mountain before he laughed. "I recall that you obtained the ancestor stone in that area, am I right? I was able to detect you at that time. If I had known that a demonic spirit was hidden within, I would have most likely tossed it away," Lin Dong said. After which, he looked at little Martin before the both of them laughed. Meanwhile, their laughters were filled with rich brotherly sentiment. Initially, Little Flame insisted on coming along. In fact, he even wanted to return the Chaos ancestral symbol. However, I stopped him from doing so, Little Martin said. Lin Dong nodded. Meanwhile, Qingtan also gave her darkness ancestral symbol to the Darkness Master. This was because he did not want them to intentionally reduce the strength on their side for his sake. After all, they desperately needed such strength now. In the following days, allow us to stay with you. In any case, whatever happens next has nothing to do with us. If they succeed, the world will be saved. However, if they fail, well, there is no need for us to put up a struggle then. Things would be rather straightforward if all of us died together. Little Martin laughed. Lin Dong smiled and nodded. However, his smile looked a little forced. As the days passed, the Lin family became increasingly lively. Lin Hong, Lin Xia, and the rest had all been called back. In fact, even some of the younger members of the Lin clan had insisted on following them back to Qingyang town. In a short period of time, the originally peaceful Lin family became much livelier. Moreover, it seemed as though Lin Dong had put down certain baggage. In fact, he would joke around with them occasionally. Moreover, as he recalled the various events that took place during his childhood, he would involuntarily burst out into laughter. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Lin Dong was sitting at the edge of a cliff in the back mountain. Meanwhile, he was staring at the endless mountain range and the swiveling clouds in the sky. During this half a month's time, he had not trained at all. Meanwhile, he had unilaterally severed any connection with the three ancestral symbols, Ancestor Stone, Great Desolate Tablet, and other divine objects originally present within his body. It felt as though he had severed the lines of fate. Behind him, the faint sound of footsteps sounded. Immediately, Lin Dong gently tilted his head, before he saw Qingtan gently walking over. Currently, she was no longer wearing the black dress that she typically wore in the Darkness Palace, and had put on a simple emerald dress instead. Faintly, she now bore some resemblance to that naive little girl from before. Qingtan arrived beside Lin Dong before she crouched down. Then, she used her clear large eyes to stare at him, before she softly asked, "Brother Lin Dong, you still upset?" "No, I'm not." Lin Dong smiled and rubbed her little head before he said, "It's just that I feel like all my hard work over the years have gone to waste." "That's not true. Brother Lin Dong, you have managed to change many things. In my eyes, you are always the strongest." Back then, Lin Langtian seemed like such an untouchable existence in our eyes. At that time, even though all of us hated him bitterly, no one dared to do anything to him. However, thanks to your hard work, we succeeded eventually. Do you know, when we received news that you killed Lin Langtian, even our father cried. Qingtan tilted her head before she smiled in a loving manner. It doesn't matter what others speak of you. You are the most important person in our hearts. Lin Dong looked at this young lady, who had a solemn expression on her face, before he felt a little absent-minded. Promptly, warmth surged within his heart. A rushing wind sound appeared, before little Martin appeared in the vicinity of this cliff. Following which, he looked at Lin Dong and it seemed as if he was hesitating over whether he should speak to him. What is it? Lin Dong looked at him and asked. According to the news I received, they have already set up a formation in the chaotic demon sea and are ready to begin. Lin Dong's expression froze momentarily. Promptly, he lowered his head and remained silent for a long time. Finally, he slowly lifted his head before he sucked in a deep breath of air. After which, a gentle smile appeared on his face. In that case, I should start as well. I will protect those that I care about in my own way. The sky above chaotic demon sea. Compared to the rather unknown small Qingyang town, this place was basically the focus of the entire world's attention. This was because one of the 8 ancient masters, the Ice Master, would attempt to break into the ancestor stage here. This was also the final hope of the countless lives in this world. A black sea of people spread over the sea, practically covering the entire sea region below. At this moment, all of them were anxiously looking towards the sky above. Many figures were seated in the sky, while powerful auras spread and covered the entire place. These people were basically all at the reincarnation stage. They were clearly the top fighting force of this world. Countless figures stood quietly in the middle of the sky. The atmosphere was a little silent. Ying Huanhuan looked at the heavens as cold light flowed within her pretty crystal-like eyes. It seemed as though she could see the seal between the plains far, far away. The seal was gradually weakening. Let's prepare to begin. Ying Huanhuan withdrew her eyes and looked towards the Life-Death Master and the rest. Her current voice contained a bone-chilling iciness, and not even the slightest emotional fluctuations could be heard within it. This made her appear like a block of 10,000-year ice. It was as if all of her emotions had been frozen. The Life-Death Masters group could not help but let out a bitter laugh upon seeing Ying Huanhuan's condition. She had become like this ever since she had returned from the Western Xian region. I wonder if that little fellow Lin Dong is trying to pass the 3 reincarnation tribulations. He really is a lunatic. The spatial master muttered. Ying Huanhuan lowered her pretty eyes as though she did not hear anything. However, the sudden increase in the surrounding cold qi betrayed the fluctuations in her heart. She was clearly unable to truly maintain her sealed heart in the face of that name. I say, why don't you let Lin Dong try? He already has the qualifications. Isn't the reason he trained so crazily because he wanted to prevent this scene from occurring? Why did you reject him at such a time? The Flame Master finally sighed and said. You should say a little less. The Life-Death Master frowned. She looked at the ice-like Ying Huanhuan and quietly sighed in her heart. Lin Dong was admittedly suffering, but so was Ying Huanhuan. However, what else could she possibly do now? Let's get ready. Ying Huanhuan merely stared at the sea of people below, and spoke in a faint voice. After which, she finally lifted her head, and looked in the direction of the Eastern Xian region. Her hand clenched tightly as her nails pierced into her palm. Dark red blood rolled down her fingertips, transforming into a dark red ice bead which turned into dust. She sat down in the air. Seeing this, everyone present suddenly became quiet. The Life-Death Masters group sat in a circle around her, while the countless experts also sat down in the air, forming another outer circle. They seemed to form an extremely huge formation. 8 great ancestral symbols. Ying Huanhuan opened her red lips slightly as her icy voice echoed. Rushing wind sounds appeared, and rays of light shot out one after another. In the end, they hovered in the sky. The light faded, and they turned into many ancient symbols. Nearby, Mu Lingshan also gently bit her lip. Her figure moved as light erupted from within her body. She turned into an ancient white and black symbol and charged forward. 8 ancestral symbols rotated in the sky as endless power pulsated outwards. 9 great divine objects. The ancestral stone, Great Desolate Tablet, Darkness Saint Side, King Destroying Heavenly Plate, Chaos Stone Axe, renowned and powerful divine objects from that ancient era appeared one after another. Finally, they formed a circle of light outside of the 8 ancestral symbols. Light shined from the ancestral symbols and divine objects and started extend. It ultimately converged into a giant and extremely complicated formation. Ying Huan Huan was coincidentally seated at the middle of the formation. Formation activate. Upon hearing this icy voice, all the reincarnation stage peak experts in the outer ring responded in unison. A thought passed through their minds as vast and mighty Yuan power swept out. The entire sea immediately started to rage. Giant 100,000 feet waves rose and crashed as viscous Yuan power poured endlessly into the formation. 100,000 feet large light circle slowly spread in the sky, an extremely spectacular sight. The endless Yuan power also began to circulate within the formation. Finally, it turned into many pillars of light, which merged into the middle of the formation where Ying Huan Huan was located. The 6 men ancient masters group formed a seal with their hands when they saw this. 6 viscous beams of light shot out from their palms. After which, they merged into Ying Huan Huan's body. Crack! Following the influx of this frightening energy, layer after layer of ice began to appear on the surface of Ying Huan Huan's body. Solid ice gradually covered her and buried her entire body. Her vision gradually became blurry. Ying Huan Huan used her final bit of consciousness to look towards the distant east. Nostalgia filled her eyes, while a faint smile surfaced on her lips. Solid ice finally swallowed her body, and a lifelike ice statue was left in the sky. However, no one rested. The huge formation continued to rotate at full speed as if it did not know the meaning of exhaustion. Countless hopeful eyes looked at the ice statue. This was their final hope. The mountains at the back of Qingyang town. Lin Dong was seated atop a lonely peak as he observed the clouds and other mountain peaks around him. The state of his heart gradually became calm. Soon after, he turned his head to look at Ling Qingzhu's group at the edge of a cliff in the distance. With a faint smile, he slowly shut his eyes. The reincarnation tribulations occurred within one's body, and there would be no earth-shaking disturbances. However, it was the thing that every peak reincarnation stage expert feared the most. This was because it was impossible to escape once one fell into reincarnation. One would forget about one's original self until one's physical body rotted away and death truly came. No one in this world dared to imagine experiencing 3 reincarnation tribulations simultaneously. Besides the Ice Master, no one had ever succeeded ever since that ancient era. The moment Lin Dong shut his eyes, the Yuan power ripples surging around him completely disappeared. Even his presence had completely vanished at this moment. Clouds occasionally drifted over and concealed his body. At this very moment, he seemed to have disappeared from this world. No one was able to detect him. Everyone on the cliff watched as Lin Dong's presence disappeared. They understood that he had begun to experience the reincarnation tribulations. Soon after, little Martin waved his sleeve and a bright light barrier covered the place, isolating the lone mountain. He will have to rely on himself next. Little Martin looked at Ling Qingzhu's group and said, "Big brother Lin Dong will definitely succeed," Qingtan said with matchless certainty. She always had a sort of blind faith in Lin Dong. Ling Qingzhu also smiled faintly as she softly said, "This will likely take a long time. I will also use the opportunity to train." She looked at the vaguely visible figure on the lone mountain. "I have always let you do things yourself. Allow me to help you this time." She moved and appeared on another towering mountain. After which, she sat down. She shut her pretty eyes and a mysterious fluctuation quietly spread. "We will quietly wait for you." Little Martin sighed softly upon seeing this. All they could do now was wait. Time rapidly flowed. Time stealthily passed in the world. As time elapsed, the pressure in the world grew greater and greater. An increasing number of people could feel gradual approach of the figure of destruction from space. The countless people of this world panicked in the face of that figure of destruction. If not for the hope left in chaotic Demon Sea, the world would have probably fallen into complete chaos. An increasing number of strong individuals began to hurry towards chaotic Demon Sea. They really wished to know if the Ice Master would be able to successfully advance to the Ancestor stage. Chaotic Demon Sea had also become unprecedentedly lively and crowded. This was especially the case for the sea region where the formation was located. Almost every island was covered with a sea of people. Many pairs of anxious and worried eyes were focused on the sky. There was no activity from the ice statue at the middle of the huge formation. She was akin to a bottomless pit, allowing the frightening energy to continue pouring into her. However, she did not show any signs of awakening. This situation undoubtedly left everyone a little uneasy. However, there was nothing they could but wait. Time flew by, and half a year passed. While the atmosphere in chaotic Demon Sea gradually became a little uneasy, the peaceful mountains at the back of Qingyang town was likewise rather calm. The figure on the lone peak was now covered in dust. Little Martin's group stood at the edge of a cliff. A great amount of change had occurred to Lin Dong's body over the past half a year. Initially, his body had become older at a frightening speed. His black hair turned grayish-white, while an intense aura of death emanated from him. That scene had caused their hearts to jump to their throats. Fortunately, when this aging reached the limit, Lin Dong gradually began to recover. However, this recovery was a little overboard. His originally mature and determined face had become young and tender. This appearance of that of Lin Dong in his youth. During the subsequent period of time, Lin Dong's body continued to mysteriously change between old and young. Little Martin's group could vaguely feel the interior of Lin Dong's body undergo a drastic transformation while his outer appearance was changed. The reason for such a transformation was definitely because of an unusual trial within reincarnation. Such a trial could not be seen nor touched. However, the danger involved was sufficient to frighten anyone. Time continued to pass. The ice statue in chaotic Demon Sea and the ever-changing figure in Qingyang town still showed no signs of awakening. Another 5 months passed in the same manner. The atmosphere of the world had gradually become tense, while an indescribable aura spread. Many people had even stopped doing anything. The vast and endless chaotic Demon Sea was now overcrowded with people. Countless pairs of fanatical eyes were filled with anticipation as they watched the ice statue in the sky. Some had even kneeled down and started praying for a miracle to appear. Less and less time remained. An incomparably huge crack was slowly torn open in the distant emptiness of space. Demonic chi surged behind the crack. An evil eye seemed to be coldly looking at the world which it had once stepped on. This video will end here.